What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What's going on, guys? Week 6, Cashing Points here with Graham Barfield and Ryan Heath to talk over a very fun 10-game slate. Pretty tight pricing this week, which will make some of the Galaxy brain plays, I think, a little bit more interesting. Let's get right into it, guys. Arizona Cardinals at the Indianapolis Colts. Cardinals are 7-point underdogs here. Total is 47.5 on the injury front. Kyler Murray had a limited practice on Friday, his only practice of the week, and he is officially listed as questionable for week 6. Ryan, I'll throw it over to you. I think everybody wants to play some Colts this week. Colts offense has been absolutely incredible. No team averages more EPA per play or has a higher success rate than the Indianapolis Colts. The question is, Ryan, where do we want to go on Indianapolis? Feels pretty wide open here.
Yeah, so I think the Colts are fine this week. Daniel Jones is finally priced probably about where he should be at $6K. But they do have the second highest implied team total. Jones has been pretty efficient. Would totally understand why you would want to go there. The biggest thing in this matchup to me is that the Cardinals always funnel everything underneath. They've played cover 4 at the league's highest rate. And what we've seen from Daniel Jones against cover 4 is that his ADOT comes way down and his deep throw rate comes way down. So to me, that's like a ceiling limiting note that kind of reduces some of my interest in Jones. But if I do go there, it's just going to be him and Tyler Warren. Warren at 4,900. He is pretty much the only relevant Colts receiver against cover 4 at the very least. Team high 36% target share against it. Top 4 in yards per outrun against cover 4 among all wide receivers this year. Warren's great, leading the position in receiving yards per game. That would be like the single skinny stack I would go with. Not a lot of interest in Michael Pittman, just an 11% target share against cover 4. You would kind of want him getting downfield, and I don't think that's really what this matchup encourages. Daniel Jones, Tyler Warren is fine. Jonathan Taylor is obviously an amazing play with the Colts favored by a touchdown. Over nearly 26 DraftKings fantasy points per game and wins over the past 2 seasons, 40% more efficient by fantasy points per snap while leading. Taylor's great. That one's really easy. So I actually think the Colts are pretty simple this week.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I do think, if you want to play a lot of Daniel Jones, you can get to some Michael Pittman, but certainly like Jonathan Taylor or Tyler Warren there the most. Graham, on the Arizona side here, it feels also pretty cut and dry. Trey McBride, always a fine play. I think I'm a little bit more interested in Michael Carter. What do you think of the Arizona side of this game?
Yeah, Trey McBride's always in play, but until Jake Ferguson leaps him on DraftKings, I'm just going to keep playing Jake Ferguson. I loved Ryan's Tyler Warren analysis. I prefer him as well to McBride, but, McBride's always okay. I like Michael Carter quite a bit. I'm pretty surprised to see the ownership projections is pretty low on him, 5,300 on DraftKings. The big surprising thing is we kind of knew that he'd get the early down role last week, but he played more on passing downs than Amari DiMercato. Had 15 routes, 5 targets. DiMercato had 9 routes, 0. Colts can be run on as well. It's just I have zero faith in Kyler, especially like a gimpy Kyler. But I think Carter has a significantly higher floor than most people are kind of anticipating just with his passing down work.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I do think there's, some unknown regarding Carter's potential workload here, just given, his backup got punched by the head coach. He could get basically every touch this week.
Yeah.
It's just a question of if the offense can move the ball. And I'm right there with you. You can justify Trey McBride, but he's a guy that I think is, if current ownership projections hold, we have him at 17%, going to go massively over-owned relative to some of the other tight end options. On this slate, we have Jake Ferguson. We have Warren, who I think is an outright better play. We also have some solid cheap punts in guys like Michael Mayer, David Njoku, even Hunter Long, who we will get to a little bit later. That game was solid. Let's move on to a much more fun game from a fantasy perspective. Dallas Cowboys are 3-point favorites at the Carolina Panthers. Total here is a slate high, 49.5. On the injury front, CeeDee Lamb, Kevontae Turpin, and Miles Sanders have all been ruled out for Dallas. On the Carolina side, Jalen Coker got in a week of full practices. He's likely to be back. Jatavion Sanders is questionable. Ryan, this is another awesome spot for Dak Prescott and the Cowboys offense, one of the highest team totals on the slate. Tell me about Dak. I feel like Cowboys side, very, very easy to stack up this week.
Yeah, it's really easy here. So Panthers are a top 5 pass funnel by PROE allowed. The Cowboys have been at a positive pass rate over expectation in every single one of their games this season. One of only 4 teams that we can say that about. So we can think they'll be very aggressive, even if they do get out ahead. And the best thing is that the Panthers play a ton of cover 3, always have, always will. And Dak has been the best quarterback in the NFL against cover 3 this year. He has the highest adjusted net yards per attempt against it, 18% deep throw rate. He's very aggressive in attacking cover 3. That's what we want for tournaments. I think he's an awesome, awesome tournament play. There are 3 quarterbacks I really want to play on this slate. Dak is one of them. And the stack is really easy too, with CeeDee Lamb being out, because it has just been Jake Ferguson and George Pickens against cover 3 that Dak has mostly been targeting. Ferguson up at a 40% target per route run versus it. George Pickens at 35% target per route run against cover 3. Both of their utilization has been amazing since Lamb has been out. Ferguson up at 17.4 expected fantasy points per game. That's like 4 XFP per game better than Trey McBride. George Pickens, we've seen the ceiling. Yeah, I think it's just really simple Dak doubles here. Javonte Williams, also a great play, though. Don't want to downplay him at all. Also top 5 at the position in expected fantasy points per game, just 6,400. And interestingly, Javonte's been so good despite the Cowboys not actually holding leads very much this year. He easily leads all running backs in fantasy points per snap while leading, but they've done that on less than 20% of their offensive plays. So with them as big favorites, could totally understand just wanting to get onto Javonte here instead. Everything here is really great. I guess only other thing to mention is that Ryan Flournoy looks like one of the viable punts on the slate at just 3,600. Obviously had a big performance last week, kind of in that Kevontae Turpin role. None of his targets have really been against cover 3 this year, which is like a minor concern. With all of these punt wide receivers, though, I think I have some interest in using them if I'm stacking their team or their game. I don't feel any particular way about Flournoy or some of these other names we're going to say in terms of using them as one-offs. I'm really going to prefer to go with tight ends in the flex over some of these like big pay down punt wide receivers. Flournoy's fine, but not going to be like a part of my plans really.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. A lot of our top values in the flex position this week are tight ends. And if I'm getting to like a Ryan Flournoy or a Jalen Tolbert, I think that's fine. I just always want that to be in a Dak Prescott lineup, and probably only MME type lineups for that. Graham, Carolina's offense hasn't been fun a lot of weeks, but this is the spot. Bryce Young, only 4,800. We also have a very cheap Rico Dowdle coming off a bell cow workload. Cowboys defense has been a total disaster. Where are you at on the Panthers?
Yeah, Rico's just an awesome play again. We were on Rico last week. We're on Rachaad White. Going to be both, back pretty easily back in on both this week. It's a much tougher matchup. Miami is so bad on the ground. Dallas has actually fixed their run defense this season, but they're not anyone to shy away from. It's really just like a bet on, Dave Canales, this role, huge, game total. I just need to say this is the best game environment we've had maybe of the season. I really like the main slate has kind of felt like a lot of these games are like 47.5 at the high end. This is 49.5. Cowboys games have combined for 61 total points on average this season. Both offenses are playing pretty fast. They're both top 12 in pace. So, I've never once mentioned Bryce Young in a positive light on any show I think I've ever done in my entire life, but I will do it here simply because he's 4,800 and the stack is so easy with Tet. I even feel like, I don't know how you guys feel, I think Javonte is the best running back play on the slate. So Bryce plus Tet plus Javonte just makes a lot of sense in my head for game stacks. Miles Sanders now out for the season. Javonte, like Ryan was saying, has just gotten this massive workload. I mean, he's like top 5 in XFP, top 5 in snaps. He's had 90 or more scrimmage yards in 4 straight games. Yeah, I do like Panthers this week. It's scary because Bryce does have some serious like mid-game bench risk if he does, Bryce Young things and throws, a couple turnovers and has some really bad sacks. But this is like the first week I think we have like a projectable ceiling for Bryce here.
Yeah. And I mean, even if Bryce gets a full game, we've seen him score 10, 11, 12 DraftKings points in plenty of games where he's played every single snap. The thing with Bryce, though, is that he has flashed a good ceiling. I mean, I've said this a couple times on Cashing Points, but 3 of his last 8 games, over 26 DraftKings points. And this would be the spot for a ceiling performance from Bryce Young. Like Graham said, the stack with Tet McMillan, very, very straightforward there. I don't think I'm getting to any like Jalen Coker in his first game back. Obviously not getting to Xavier Legette. And then, tight end is messy, assuming Jatavion Sanders comes back. So probably is just either a single stack with Tet or maybe you're mixing in some Rico Dowdle. And yeah, Graham, I'm with you. Javonte Williams is a great play, but there are a lot of really good running back plays on this slate. Let's keep it moving, guys. Los Angeles Rams at the Baltimore Ravens. Rams are 7.5-point favorites. Total here is 44.5 on the injury front. Tyler Higbee is back and Tutu Atwell is questionable on the Rams side. For Baltimore, Lamar Jackson is out. Zay Flowers is questionable. And the Ravens are down 5 defensive starters, but Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey are both good to go and off the injury report this week. Ryan, I mean, hard not to like Matthew Stafford in this spot. This Ravens defense has been an absolute disaster. Producer Tom is behind the glass just cringing at the thought of the Rams offense going against this Ravens defense. Yeah, what are your thoughts here? Puka Nacua obviously projecting incredibly well. Devontae Adams projecting incredibly well. And then we also have, the game script that we generally look for Kyren Williams.
Yeah, cry harder, producer Tom. I know it's rough on you, but it's fun for fantasy. So your team's defense has been a worthy sacrifice. Yeah, Ravens are going to be down at least 5 starters on defense this week. They just gave up over 28 DraftKings points to CJ Stroud of all quarterbacks, top 5 in deep yards per game allowed, second most schedule adjusted to opposing quarterbacks. So yeah, obviously Matthew Stafford, I have a ton of interest in. He's the second of the 3 quarterbacks I mentioned that I really want to play in tournaments this week. We're showing just 6% ownership right now, which just feels so wrong to me. I don't understand why Stafford goes under-owned every single week, seemingly. But yeah, the stack is super easy. It's doubles with Puka, with Devontae. I guess one note for me is that outside of Stafford doubles, if I can only choose one Ram, I would go with Puka Nacua if I can afford him, obviously. This is also an amazing schematic matchup for him. Ravens have been playing a lot more single high this year, a lot more cover 3 last week with all of these defensive injuries. And Puka leads the NFL in target share against single high by a full 10% in target share, which is just absurd. It's like 42% down to 32% with Malik Neighbors, who is not on the field anymore. It's just unbelievable. For that reason, I kind of get like the projected ownership gap between Puka and Devontae Adams. Not that Devontae's a bad play. Like he's still second in the NFL in end zone targets, top 3 in expected fantasy points per game. He's a really good play. But I think like weeks where the Rams are going to see more too high is probably where I'll be more looking to pivot from Puka to Adams. Not doing that this week. Want to play Puka. I do think the best Puka pivot is Kyren Williams. You'll get a little bit of an ownership discount there just because you are playing more to the scenario where the Rams easily control the game and they aren't pushed and Kyren just goes off. In 11 games that the Rams have won by at least 7 points since he became the starter, Kyren's at nearly 22 DraftKings fantasy points per game. Ravens allowing the second most schedule adjusted to running backs, a ton to man gap concepts, which Kyren runs quite a decent bit. And his role was really good last week. Probably because of the early Blake Corum fumble, but maybe it sticks around. He had nearly a career high in route participation, career high in target share, up above 20%. So Kyren is very, very enticing to me in any lineup that I can't afford Puka Nacua. Only other thing I guess I want to say on this game is that if you are playing a Stafford double, I kind of do think you need a Ravens bring back, as gross as it feels, just because you're number one, Nacua is so highly owned and you want any way to bring down the total ownership of that stack. And also because, yeah, you don't want Kyren Williams to come and ruin you in a game environment sense. So I do like Zay Flowers as the bring back. He's kind of like the least bad option to me here in the Cooper Rush offense, but I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily need to get to a Ravens player here. I mean, I certainly get what you're saying, but the Rams have been a bit more aggressive this season than in previous seasons, passing the ball with a lead. Graham, I'm curious what you think here, and also curious what you think on Puka versus Devontae Adams, because in terms of usage, they're very close, but obviously price and production is pretty different for these guys.
Yeah, pound for pound, McCaffrey's the best play on the slate. Then I think it's pretty clearly Puka as number 2, like just straight up, price included. Like Ryan was saying, I think Adams is still a pretty good buy low just based off the volume. And I agree with you, Jake. I don't think you have to have a bring back in this Ravens game. I mean, they only ran 43 plays last week. So it's like a twofold thing. Like their offense can't stay on the field, plus their defense has lost all their best players, giving up a ton of explosive plays, and their offense like just leaves them out on the field. So it's a little bit of a twofold thing. Ravens also have their bye next week. Like they could just kind of stick a fork in it, kind of like they did last week with that Texans game, just kind of gave up a little bit. For that reason, I love Kyren with Rams defense. I think that makes a ton of sense in this spot. I know I was just saying Javonte Williams is probably the best running back play on the slate, just given price, given his volume, given that game script we were just talking about. But Kyren is right behind him at 6,300. And yeah, he's going to be lower owned, that's for sure. So the way to kind of get off the Puka chalk to me is to play Kyren with Rams D. And I'm struggling with the Ravens, man, like really struggling. Zay is definitely the best bring back on DraftKings, but yeah, I just really question the ceiling with Cooper Rush and just the general problems with this offense. The Rams are just going to sell out to stop the run. So I guess you could, make a case that they have to throw a little bit more into trailing game script, but that's the only way I'd go is with Zay.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Really don't think you need the Baltimore Ravens run back. I mean, Rams could just do whatever they want here and put up a ton of points, but forced to choose would definitely go with Zay Flowers there. Alrighty, guys, let's keep it moving. Cleveland Browns at the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a gross one. Total only 37.5. Browns are 5.5 point underdogs. Only notable injury here is that Calvin Austin will be out for the Steelers. Graham, Quinshon Judkins is a guy who over the last 2 weeks, 19 expected fantasy points per game, 19 actual fantasy points per game. Those are both RB3 overall numbers over the full season. Obviously, he plays for a terrible offense, but I think he's a pretty interesting play this week. As I generally don't get too contrarian at running back, but Judkins is really standing out because he's pigeonholed in between Rico Dowdle and Rachaad White, who are going to project way better. I mean, both in our stuff and industry wide. Curious what you think on Judkins here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's an awesome tournament play. This is another week to play 3 running backs on DraftKings, on FanDuel, wherever you're playing. And I would definitely mix in quite a bit of Judkins. Like you were saying, he's probably going to come in sub 10%. I'm just not sure that should be the case, especially in this matchup. Steelers can be run on, especially in the way that they're using Judkins. They're mainly using him off gap blocking concepts. Steelers are bottom 5 in yards per carry, bottom 5 in success rate allowed. The one thing with Judkins, though, is like he's not getting a ton of passing down work. Like 23% route share, like that doesn't exactly excite me. But I mean, it like kind of doesn't matter. They've just been willing to use him, when they're down 7, down 10, down 13, to just keep running him. And he's incredible. I mean, he's 5th in the league in rushing yards per game, and he's 5,900 on DK. So the value is certainly there. The way I would also play it is with Browns defense. Rodgers can't move anymore. Browns have the best defensive player in the NFL, Myles Garrett. They can certainly get after it. Like you were noting, this game environment is pretty gross, really low total. Judkins, Browns defense, I think is 2,500 on DK. I like that correlation quite a bit.
Yeah, I do too. Right now we have Judkins projected for 13% ownership. I'm not even sure. Yeah, I'm not even sure he gets that high, just given that, Rachaad White, Rico Dowdle, much easier clicks, a few hundred more. You can get to Javonte, get to Kyron. Ryan, curious what you think on Judkins and if anyone else in this relatively gross game stands out to you.
Yeah, I absolutely love Judkins. I think he's my favorite tournament play among all running backs, I think. And the reason for that is twofold. Look, this is a tightly priced slate where I will take any possible savings I can get. Paying down to a Judkins or even to a Michael Carter, who we talked about earlier, just a really good way to save on both salary and ownership. Little scary to do that at running back, as you mentioned, Jake. That's not like general DFS advice I would give out, but there are just so many good running back plays and good running backs in the league right now that I think it makes sense. Yeah, on the matchup for Judkins too, Steelers allowing the fourth highest explosive run rate. They are very vulnerable to opposing man gap concepts, which Judkins primarily runs. He's still RB3 in expected fantasy points per game over his last 3 games, even with the Browns trailing for a lot of that. So yeah, I think they just keep feeding him regardless. Judkins, great play. Other guys in this game, I would say the only other play I would call a good play in this game is David Njoku. So he's just 3,500. This is a tight end I would absolutely play in my flex this week to save on salary. We saw his best role of the season last week in Dylan Gabriel's first start. It's also a really good matchup. Steelers kind of also funnel everything underneath, 5th most receiving yards per game allowed within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. And we've just kind of seen these inexperienced Browns QBs lock on to Njoku before. Anyone remember the last 2 seasons in 4 games with Dorian Thompson-Robinson? He was at 17.7 expected fantasy points per game. He doubled all other Browns in first read targets last week. Yeah, just give me Njoku for the pure volume here. Aside from that, I have a hard time. DK Metcalf is kind of breaking my brain. Normally, I'd be into like the alpha outside receiver against cover 1, but Metcalf's actually been bad against cover 1 since the start of last year. So I don't really want to go there. Jaylen Warren is projecting for some ownership, and I certainly get it. His role was very good the game before he got injured. Then we see Kenny Gainwell come in as the bell cow and play really well, score a ton of fantasy points. I think the role probably just goes back to Jaylen Warren, but if he's going to be higher owned than some of these other plays, like a Quinshon Judkins, who I think just has more talent-based upside, more big play upside, then I'm just not going to get to Warren ultimately.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Also very good Cleveland run defense. And yeah, I'm struggling with Metcalf as well. Like, this feels like a good spot. Joe Dolan writes our wide receiver cornerback matchup article, and he highlighted this as one of the better spots on the slate. But DK Metcalf, 9.9 expected fantasy points per game. That's outside the top 50. That's tied with Harold Fannin, who is a backup tight end. Not exactly encouraging, but 5,500 for DK Metcalf. That's a pretty solid price for a player of his talent. It's just a very gross game environment. I wish this was had a little more offensive juice, but I'm right there with you. I think one of the best ways, again, as we've highlighted, very tight slate in terms of pricing. I think one of the best ways to be able to pay up for something like 3 running backs is to play a David Njoku or some of these other cheap tight ends that we have available. This is a very, very good tight end and running back slate overall. Let's move it on to the Los Angeles Chargers at the Miami Dolphins. Chargers are 4.5-point favorites. Total here is 44.5. On the injury front, Quentin Johnston is questionable with a hamstring injury. I think he goes. Certainly worth keeping an eye on. Ryan, I mean, this has to be a game where the Chargers ride Justin Herbert, right? They rank 3rd in pass rate over expectation. They have no running backs left. The only thing I'm struggling with, and this is sort of a constant struggle with the Chargers, given how things have broken this year, is they have 3 very viable wide receivers. We're generally not triple stacking our quarterback. Who do you like between Keenan Allen, Lad McConkey, Quentin Johnston here?
Yeah, so this is probably the first week where I felt very confident in that answer, and you've asked me that question. It feels like every single week, so I'm glad to bring some solid analysis for it here now. Basically, everything the Dolphins have been doing defensively is also funneling everything underneath. They are near the top of the NFL in blitz rate this year. When blitz, Justin Herbert's ADOT comes down, his average time to throw comes down, and his target shares to both Keenan Allen and Lad McConkey have gone up. So it's Keenan leading the Chargers in target share against the blitz, then Lad, then QJ as like a pretty decent or distant third. So I think Lad and Keenan are clearly who I would be going with in Herbert doubles. I am interested in Herbert doubles, but to me, like the Dak Prescotts, the Matthew Staffords just have similar or better upside at lower projected ownership. So I'm probably not going to get to as much Herbert for that reason. Also, everything I just said about funneling things underneath means fewer big plays. We're not like pushing the game as hard as we would be if we were throwing deep bomb touchdowns to Quentin Johnston. So I think Herbert's a fine play. He's not anywhere near like a top 3 or 4 QB play on the slate for me. Yeah, that's kind of it on the Chargers side. I'm not going to either Hassan Haskins or Kamani Vidal. They're both priced at 5K. Yes, it's obviously a good matchup for any opposing running back. Dolphins second most schedule adjusted on the ground, second most extreme run funnel in football by P-Row. But I just can't do Haskins or Vidal. Like the fact that they didn't have any interest in involving either of these running backs alongside Hampton at any point this season, including when Najee Harris wasn't available, just tells me that they have no confidence in either of these guys. They're probably going to throw a lot, or they just won't run a lot of plays. So yeah, it's probably my favorite way to play this game is just to play Keenan standalone and say, I'm going to take the PPR scam from Keenan this week and leave the rest of it alone on the Chargers side. But if not, Herbert doubles, Keenan, Lad, Herbert.
Yeah, I don't know how many game stacks I'm going to get to here, but I do think you can do a lot of interesting sort of mini stacks with a Keenan, Jalen Waddle, Lad McConkey, Devon Achane, Graham. I mean, things are very, very concentrated on the Miami side with those guys that I highlighted. What do you think of Waddle and Achane here?
Yeah, Waddle Keenan makes a ton of sense. I'm on Keenan for a lot of the same reasons Ryan is. Miami just plays a ton of too high. That has just been like Keenan Allen's jam this season. Yeah, Waddle is just way too cheap, though. I mean, like you said, super consolidated, but 6,100. This guy is going to be probably 65, 68, 7K for the rest of the season. Just keep banking the value. I mean, in 2 games without Tyreek Hill and Tua in the lineup over the last 3 years, he's gone for 8, 142 and 1. He's got 6, 110 and 1 last week. Got 35% of the first reads. I got to ask the question: is Darren Waller in play at 4K? Like, I kind of think he is. He looks incredible. Like, this is just like pure anecdote, like not based on data. Like, his role has been just okay. Not running a full-time route share, but he looks so big and so fast and like impossible to cover. And Mike McDaniel's using him the exact right way. He's basically not using him in line at all. Waller's running 70% of his routes out wide. And I feel like we're getting like a big wide receiver at 4K who has like really strong touchdown equity. So I don't know. Waller to me is like, Jake, you said earlier, this is a great tight end slate. Waller is someone who I've really warmed up on as this week has gone on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm right there with you. He's basically in the Johnny Smith role from last year, which was super, super valuable.
But better. He gets actual downfield targets. Like John is like was the low ADOT spam targets.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's with no Tyreek Hill, like this whole offense is going to be Waddle, Achane, Darren Waller. And with guys like Waller, guys like Njoku, they're just not projecting for much ownership. And I really like these guys, I think, a lot more than some of the, Dontavian Wicks, these cheap sub 4K wide receivers on this slate who project pretty well. Ryan, do you have anything to add on Darren Waller?
Yeah, only thing I would add is that the Chargers are bottom 4 in man coverage rate. And if this is just the Jonnu Smith role, that would be a positive schematic note for Darren Waller. He was best against Jonnu was best against cover 3, cover 4, cover 2 last year. So yeah, really like Waller. Would much rather play him than like a Malik Washington, who would be the cheap wide receiver punt in this game. Yeah, really just echoing everything you said about Waller and tight ends versus wide receivers. HN to me is just fine. He's priced up at 7,800. It's what his price should be. He also was running a lot more of his routes from the slot from out wide last week, which is interesting to me. Really strong like floor. Yeah, I don't know that he has like the best touchdown equity either, with Ollie Gordon mixing in for some of the goal line looks. Yeah, he's awesome. Like that was a sick touchdown catch last week. He would stack that one up against any receiver in the league. But yeah, HN on this slate where pricing is so tight, probably not my favorite play on the Dolphins. We'll get to much more Waddle and Waller.
Yeah, he seems like a guy who's going to get pinched a little bit in ownership because you can't just find the extra salary for a Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey and feel a little bit more confident or pay down because, again, pricing is quite tight. And yeah, like Ryan highlighted, the touchdown equity isn't exactly great. Dolphins only a 19.5 implied team total, lower than the Cardinals, lower than the Saints even. Speaking of the Saints, let's move it on to the New England Patriots at the New Orleans Saints. Patriots, 3.5 point favorites here. Total is 45.5 on the injury front. Antonio Gibson done for the year with a torn ACL. Christian Gonzalez is questionable for New England. Alvin Kamara also questionable with an ankle injury for the Saints. Ryan, I got to go to you as our resident Patriots fan here. This is the highest implied team total at 24.5 of Drake May's career. Also feels like a pretty straightforward stack. Stephon Diggs has been earning a ton of targets lately. Hunter Henry is 4th among all tight ends in expected fantasy points per game. Hard not to like Drake May a little bit this week, right?
Yeah, I definitely like him. We're seeing him as top 3 in ownership right now. That's not like a huge deal to me, but it makes me like a little less, I guess, excited. But this is a pretty good spot. Patriots have been very pass heavy this year, top 6 by P-Row, where the Saints defense has also been a pass funnel by P-Row allowed. So I like this quite a bit. We also see in all of these Saints games, they always kind of push the pace, at which is a note we repeat every week, but it remains true. So yeah, I think May with Diggs and or Henry, I would prefer Diggs if I'm only picking one, but you can certainly double stack him. Pretty solid. I really like what they've done kind of with the Stephon Diggs role, where they've moved him into the slot a little bit more, which is kind of where he was succeeding with Houston last week as well. Up above 3 yards per out run. Yeah, just looks very solid. Clearly has the chemistry where he is like who May is looking for when he's out of the pocket, when the play breaks down. Think that's clearly the most upside is just May plus Diggs. So yeah, I like it a decent bit here. I think like who you go with as the bring back is maybe the more interesting discussion, but I'll leave that to you guys.
Yeah. So, something that's interesting about the Saints side, and I'm going to get like the field. I'm going to get to more May than I will Spencer Rattler, but we're projecting these guys, and so is the industry, both Drake May and Spencer Rattler, as comparable values. Now, I think Drake May obviously has the better ceiling there, Graham, but, Rattler's been running a little bit. This is a Saints offense that does run a ton of plays. They're very condensed. Curious what you think on him, rest of the Saints side. Obviously, Chris Olave is going to be chalk. His expected fantasy points per game has been second to only Puka Nacua. So the workload's been awesome. It just hasn't shown in the box score at all.
Yeah, I think May is the best quarterback play on the slate by a significant margin. I mean, he's QB 10 this season with 19.5 fantasy points per game, and he's not running. He's actually running less than he did last year. And then now he gets this awesome spot. I mean, the Saints are top 5 in pace. They're the fastest team in the NFL. They're top 5 in play volume. Every single week, this team is just ripping off a ton of plays. And this game has some significant upside in terms of it, just like its avenues to shooting out. Saints have certainly been a little bit better on offense than I think anybody expected, just in terms of their ability to move the ball. And then, Drake May is kind of morphing into one of the NFL's best passers. I mean, he's top 10 in every metric that matters: adjusted net yards per pass attempt. He's QB2 in completion rate over expectation. He's top 5 in pretty much all of our accuracy stuff. So yeah, I think May is awesome. I think you stack him with Diggs. If you play on FanDuel, Diggs is just like the stone cold nuts over there. He's 5,900, 5,800. I was just looking at that. Yeah, 5,900 on FanDuel. He's the nuts over there. As for the bring back, I will always prefer Rashid Shaheed to Chris Olave because I just think he has more single week upside. Yeah, Olave's volume is incredible. But what's no one is talking about with this guy is like they have completely changed his role. And this is good for DraftKings just for like the 5, 6, 7 catches that he gets. But his average depth of target now is 8.1 yards. That's significantly lower than last year when he was at 11-yard ADOT and way lower than 2023 when he had a 13-yard ADOT. I just love Rashid Shaheed's upside. He leads this team in targets per route run, yards per route run against man coverage. Patriots are deploying man coverage at the 9th highest rate, and Shaheed's just a little bit cheaper. But, Olave is a good play. I don't want to like take anything away from it. He's 5,100, like great volume-based play, but I will still keep thinking that Shaheed has more single week upside just because he does get those deep targets, and especially in this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like Shaheed as the pivot off of Olave if you want to save on ownership there. Olave going to be really, really popular. We have him at 22%. Yeah. Hard to get away from him in like a cash game type format, but I think in tournaments you can certainly look elsewhere. That said, the volume for Olave has just been incredible. 10.2 targets per game. That's second among all players. Ryan, anything to add on the Saints side? My only other note here is I think Kamara goes, but if he sits, Taysom Hill at 3K is going to be like a legitimately amazing tight end play, right? He had, I believe, 5 carries and 9 snaps last week. Again, I don't think we're going to get this angle, but that would be pretty fun.
Yeah, that would be really fun. I actually had totally missed that. So really good call out there. Yeah, definitely tune in to the Sunday morning update. I'm sure Scott and Johnny will have all the Taysom Hill takes you need on that show. But yeah, that's really interesting. And I kind of really hope we get that now.
Yeah, I think Kamara goes, but that would be pretty fun. Juwan Johnson didn't see like any usage last week, but he did still run a route on basically every drop back. So yeah, I do think he's viable, but it's just a stacked tight end slate. Like, I don't know if I'm getting to Juwan when there's David Njoku, who's projecting incredibly well. If you want to, pay all the way down, we have Hunter Long, even Michael Mayer's projecting pretty well. So, in that range, I don't think I'm going to get to much Juwan, but you can go there, especially if you're playing a lot of Drake May. You want to mix up your bringbacks a little bit. Juwan and Shaheed are decent ways to do so. All right, let's keep it moving to our final 1 p.m. game here. It is the Seattle Seahawks at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Total here is 47.5. Seahawks are 1.5 point favorites. On the injury front, Julian Love, Devon Witherspoon, and Reek Woolen, all doubtful for Seattle. So backup secondary against Trevor Lawrence here. Graham, speaking of Trevor Lawrence, he's projecting as one of the most popular plays on the slate. That's always pretty terrifying given the play that we've seen from Trevor Lawrence over his entire career. But, this is also an offense we want to bet on. And like I said, they're facing a very beat up secondary here. What do you think of the Jags?
Yeah, I just really question the ceiling with Lawrence. You go back to the start of last season, he's only finished top 12 among quarterbacks in weekly scoring in 4 of his last 15 starts. He got 28 DK last Monday night, but he needed two rushing scores to get there. It was basically the first time in the last 2 or 3 years he's actually used his legs. So yeah, I mean, Lawrence versus May at similar ownership is like pretty cut and dry to me, especially given this game environment. This game total is good, but like, I don't know, man. I mean, both teams are pretty slow in terms of their pace of play. Seattle is outside of the top 20. Jacksonville is right outside of the top 20 in pace. It's a good spot for Brian Thomas, though. Like, I will say, this is probably the first week I've been interested in Brian Thomas since week 1, but he's 6,200 still. You noted the Seahawks are just so beat up in the secondary. But, Thomas buy XFP is a pretty decent buy low. The best play in this game, and maybe the best overall like play that's not named Puka Nacua, is JSN. Like, this is the only guy, Jackson Smith-Njigba is the only guy in Puka's stratosphere right now. Jacksonville just, traded away Tyson Campbell, who's getting absolutely crushed, for Greg Newsome, who's getting absolutely crushed. That once again, Jags are just giving up the most fantasy points to outside wide receivers. And I think the only viable receiver that is in like the same projection range as Puka this week is JSN. I think he's by far the best play in this game.
Yeah, and this could be a game where we get a little bit more shootout than Seattle has faced in the past. So really like JSN on the Seattle side. Ryan, I want to keep talking Jags a little bit. I know you wrote up a Jaguar in advanced matchups, and I really want to believe, man. I mean, it's like extraterrestrial life. I really, really want it. And then I also want to throw out Hunter Long, who only earned one target last week, but was at a 76% route share after Brenton Strange got hurt. He's only 2,500. If he just absorbs the Strange role, you're looking at 9.5 expected fantasy points per game. That's awesome for a guy who's only 2,500. And again, pricing very tight on this slate. So I think Hunter Long is pretty interesting, but we have a ton of really interesting tight ends. I think this is a good week, probably the best week we've had all year for tight end in the flex, just so that you can't pay up for, something like a JSN and Puka Nacua lineup probably isn't even possible unless you double up on tight end in the flex. But yeah, Ryan, why don't you tell me about our boy Travis Hunter?
Yeah, so I want to say first that this is probably the game where it's the easiest for me to Galaxy Brain. Just there's the most options. I do think in theory it should be a very good game environment, right? Jaguars' biggest pass funnel in the NFL. The Seahawks have all of these injuries in the secondary. So if we're Galaxy Braining, Travis Hunter is at 4,700, which means he works both as a way to save salary and also as a pivot off of the Chris Olave chalk and potentially the Jawan Jennings chalk that we might get if he plays in that same price range. So I like Hunter for that reason. I also like him schematically. The Seahawks run a lot of cover 4 and cover 6. Same exact schematic matchup we were targeting Emeka Egbuka against last week. Travis Hunter has been similarly good against those shells. 3 times the receiving yards of any other Jaguars receiver against cover 4 and cover 6. It's actually 64% of his total receiving yards on the season come against those shells, which is only from 25% of his total routes. So that's really interesting. He can be kind of both the downfield threat and also like the perimeter short area threat against cover 6. That's what we saw him do last game and look amazing. He made a sick play kind of on a short outside target as well as an amazing downfield contested catch. Like, that is his game. Liam Cohn has been talking him up, showering him with praise this week. And probably the biggest reason I'm even talking about this or entertaining it is that Hunter was up at an 88% route share in the second half with Brenton Strange out. So that's just really interesting to me. If because of the Strange injury, Hunter is going to play a legitimately full-time offensive role, that's something I don't mind gambling on when he's so cheap, when nobody's going to play him, when he's in a game environment we think is good. The other Galaxy Brain angle I have in this game is I actually think that Sam Darnold is just a straight up better play than Trevor Lawrence, especially for GPPs. He's only, 300 more. As I was saying, Jaguars' biggest pass funnel in the NFL. They're going to play Greg Newsome, who they just traded for this week. He has never played in their defense before, obviously. Is just going to have a couple days of practice to get up to speed. If the Seahawks are being forced to chase on the scoreboard and Darnold is having to drop back more, that's very interesting. He's gone over 30 DraftKings points in 2 of his last 10 starts. And yeah, he's going to be a fraction of Trevor Lawrence's ownership. So just going Darnold, JSN, and then either BTJ or Hunter as the bringback is pretty appealing to me. Yeah,
I do think that's a pretty good angle here. Darnold only 2% in our ownership projections. Trevor Lawrence closer to 10%. I think there are a lot of really fun ways you can play this game. I think game stacks here overall look very, very nice. Let's move it on to a 3-game, 4 p.m. slate. First one is pretty gross. Tennessee Titans at the Las Vegas Raiders. Titans are 4.5-point underdogs. Total is 41.5. Brock Bowers is out with a knee issue. As has been the theme on this show, I will highlight the value tight end in this game. That would be Michael Mayer, who is back from being concussed. Should be filling in to the starting tight end role here. Just projecting pretty well overall. Last week, we saw Albert O earn a 71% route share and 9.6 expected fantasy points per game in that same role last week. Michael Mayer, a little bit better than Albert O, of course. So I think he's another viable, cheap tight end. Graham, this does feel like arguably the best spot all year that we're going to get for Ashton Genty. I mean, Raiders are not going to be favored in many games. He doesn't have much of a pass game role to speak of, but man, has he looked good in soft matchups. We saw him just smoke the Bears, and the Titans are, a similarly worse or similarly bad defense, I should say, against the run. What do you think about Genty here?
Yeah, for tournaments, I think he's my favorite play this week. Like, we've got just so many good running backs we've highlighted already. We'll get to another one here in a minute with Rashad, but Rico at 5,800 is going to probably be the chalkiest play on the slate, followed by Javonte Williams, followed by Rashad White. McCaffrey at 8,400 is just way too cheap. So we've got Jancy kind of just wedged in between all of that. And yeah, this is the spot. I mean, they're 4.5-point favorites. We've all seen how bad Geno's been this year. The quarterback is just completely melting down, and they're still 4.5-point favorites. Titans giving up the third most rushing yards per game. Yeah, he's just an awesome play. And like you said, getting way more passing down work, huge boost to the floor, 7 targets last week. He's got some serious upside in this game. I'm with you on Michael Mayer, but I really think Raiders defense plus Janty just makes a whole lot of sense. Raiders defense priced up, but Cam Ward is just taking a ton of sacks. Titans obviously struggling to move the ball. This game should be pretty slow in terms of pace and stuff. So Janty, Raiders defense is certainly maybe the only way to play this game that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Ryan, do you have anything to add on this game?
I kind of don't mind Calvin Ridley at 4,900.
Okay.
Just another kind of pivot off of the chalky Chris Olave. The reason for that is it's a good schematic matchup. Raiders playing cover 3. Ridley has been better against that this year. The Raiders also have not been getting a whole lot of pressure. They rank similarly to the Cardinals in every pressure rate, time to pressure stat that we have in the fantasy points data suite. And that's been really important for just this Titans offense to function whatsoever. Cam Ward has, when he's pressured, basically 0 adjusted net yards per attempt, which means that if there's a pressure, the offense on average just doesn't move forward at all, ever. So less pressure should make it easier. I don't think it's a coincidence that last week, with by far the least pressure Ward had seen yet in his career, was the first time that Calvin Ridley had a decent game. There's somewhat of a ceiling here. Ridley has 4 games above 20 DK over the past 2 seasons. Olave has done that just twice over the past 2 seasons. And he's going to be 20% owned, which is interesting. So yeah, I think Ridley is like a viable tournament play. Everyone else I would say is pretty fringy. And JC Latham back for the Titans on the offensive line. So that also helps.
Yeah, that does help. I do think if you maybe believe in this game a little bit, you could go like a Genty Ridley mini stack here. I also think, and this is not a main slate take, I need to preface it. I need to preface that, but for afternoon only, 3-game slate, I think these Cam Ward double stacks are going to go a little under-owned. Raiders have certainly given up the deep ball, and Cam Ward loves to chuck it deep. I know it's super gross, but for a 3-game slate, that is going to be one of the directions that I look at for afternoon only, not for main slate. All right, I think we covered that one well. We can move on to the much more fun Cincinnati Bengals at the Green Bay Packers. Bengals are 14-point underdogs here. Total is 44.5. On the injury front, Jamar Chase questionable with an illness. Ryan, I'll start with you. I really want to play the Packers. I think the way the field's going to do it is through Josh Jacobs. Beyond that, I am struggling a little bit. I'm just not sure, neutral scripts. We've seen Green Bay throw about 52% of the time. When they're leading by 7+, they're throwing about 50% of the time. I'm just not sure Jordan Love's going to have the volume here, even though the matchup is obviously awesome. Curious what you think on the Packers side.
I think for the millie, maybe you can go Jordan Love and just pray to God that you pick all the pass catchers he's going to throw touchdowns to, and that they mostly score through the air. I think that's viable. Not something I'm going to be doing in my pool. So yeah, Jacobs, an amazing play. Packers highest implied total of the slate, 2 touchdown favorites. Jacobs has just completely smashed in all of these spots. Bengals allowing the 4th most schedule adjusted to opposing running backs. So yeah, Jacobs really great play. The only other play here that I have a lot of interest in is Tucker Kraft at 4,700. This isn't so much like that he projects so amazing by XFP and by his role and by the volume. He doesn't, but with the highest total of the slate, he is just so live to catch multiple touchdowns. Kraft is so good, and the matchup's really good. Bengals allowing the most schedule adjusted to, or 3rd most schedule adjusted to tight ends. They also are a really big underneath funnel. They've kind of been limiting everything downfield this year, but have allowed the most yards per game of any defense within 10 yards. All of the Packers wide receivers have very deep average depth of targets this year, where it's kind of Kraft that is getting everything underneath. So he's also really fun to me as a tight end tournament play. Another guy where it's he's 4,700 versus some of these 47 to 5,200 wide receivers that I'm deciding between in the flex. I'm just going to play Kraft there a lot of the time if that's what fits. So yeah, like him quite a bit. I have no real interest in the Bengals side or anything else in this game, though.
Yeah, Bengals side is really, really tough here. The one thing that I will say, Graham, and, this is probably another afternoon only take. I don't think I'm getting there on main slate, is week 1, week 2, we're doing everything we could to try to play Joe Flacco. Obviously, totally bombed with the Browns. But now, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are tremendously talented wide receivers. We might see him get a little bit more aggressive, hopefully, in this game. Do you have any interest in the Bengals side at all here?
Yeah, anytime Jamar Chase is going to be under 5%, I have interest. This is kind of the same thing I said last week. It's it's Jamar Chase. He's not going to be owned. He's way overpriced for this Bengals offense right now, but for sure, I think you can make a case for Chase for sure this week. The problem is Green Bay is going to be in this backfield the entire game. Micah Parsons and their entire pass rush is going to just eat the Bengals offensive line alive. That's I think pretty obvious, but Chase leads this team in targets when his quarterback has been pressured this year. I can just see a lot of shallow, quick get it out, quick targets to Chase in this spot. So yeah, I think Jordan Love is my favorite tournament quarterback this week. Drake May is my favorite play overall at quarterback, but Love is just an awesome play. And I think the stack is very simple. Ryan kind of lined it up perfectly with Kraft. The Bengals have the slowest linebacker and safety group in the NFL. And Tucker Kraft is right now the best tight end in the league after the catch. So yeah, to me, it's Love, Kraft. And then if you want to, you definitely don't have to, but if you want to, I think Chase is, like last week, a pretty interesting tournament play in that Puka is going to be 30%. JSN is going to be 20 to 25. Igbuka is probably going to be 20 to 25 as well. Chase at like I said, probably sub 5% ownership. That's always in play.
Yeah, absolutely. And right there with you guys on the Tucker Kraft call. This matchup's going to funnel volume to Tucker Kraft, and he's talented enough that he could get it done on 4, 5, 6 targets anyway. So just joins a litany of great tight end plays on this slate. Let's move it on to the probably second best game, I would say, on the slate. San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. 49ers are 3-point underdogs. Total here is 47.5. On the injury front, no Brock Purdy or Ricky Pearsall for the 49ers. Juwan Jennings is questionable. Mac Jones also questionable with a knee, but I think he's basically a lock to play. On the Buccaneers side, no Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, or Bucky Irving for Tampa Bay. Ryan, let's start with the Tampa Bay side here. It feels pretty cut and dry given the injuries that they have. And I mean, Baker Mayfield, once again, not projecting for a ton of ownership, but I mean, we know that he has a massive ceiling here. He's just been a ton of fun to play. What do you think of the Bucs in this game?
Yeah, Baker, easy top 2 QB play on the slate for me. It's him and Dak that I just have trouble deciding between who I would call the best QB play on the slate. But yeah, he's a great play, and he's a great play for similar reasons to him being a great play last week. The 49ers do very similar things to the Seahawks schematically, very high in cover 4 and cover 6 rate. We've seen Baker be very aggressive. He throws deep nearly 28% of the time against those 2 coverage looks this year. Easily first in fantasy points per dropback against that, way ahead of Josh Allen. Yeah, it's just absurd. And it's Emeka Egbuka that he's been doing it through. Egbuka at 5.8 yards per out run against those 2 shells, nearly a 30% target share against them, double the next closest player on the team, which is Chris Godwin, who is not playing. So yeah, could be very concentrated just to Egbuka. I would want to add at least one other Buccaneer to the stack. I think just putting Rachaad White in makes a lot of sense. 49ers have been allowing a lot of schedule adjusted fantasy points to opposing running backs through the air. So that works for White. He's just a guy where he doesn't have to be efficient on the ground. He just needs to get all of the goal line work, which he did last week, and also being involved in the passing game. And he can get you there as a standalone play or as part of a Baker stack. I know Chris Wecht has some interest in Tez Johnson at just 3,200. To me, this is another like Ryan Flournoy type of guy where sure, I could mix him into Baker stacks if I want to make something work. Maybe if I want to make sure I also get Puka in this lineup or something like that into my Baker lineups, just to save on the salary. But other than that, I think it's pretty easily just going to be Baker, Egbuka, Rachaad White on this side of the game for me. Do want to say that this game is actually kind of close to the Cowboys and Panthers for me. Second highest over under. Both teams have been top 8 in pace this year. It's a genius play caller on one side and Baker Mayfield on the other, who is just a freaking baller. Like I think this could be like the best and most fun shootout of the day.
Yeah, it absolutely could be. And, for what it's worth, if I'm playing a lot of Baker, and I do think I'm going to end up on a lot of Baker, I do like Tez Johnson as a salary saving option at 3,200. And I mean, it's so gross, especially on a loaded tight end slate. But Cade Otton at 3,400 is legitimately in play. He's only ever done anything when the Buccaneers are missing a ton of pass catchers like they are right now. I mean, you need him to fall into the end zone. And look, I mean, every time I see Cade Otton catch a pass, I'm just like, I can't believe I played this guy. But we've seen it before. We've seen it in the past. He is capable of some big games. So those are 2 guys that I'm going to force into Baker stacks. And I do think, I looked into it after our projections meeting this morning. Tez Johnson does seem like the clearly better option over Sterling Shepard if you want a cheap Bucs wide receiver there. He was at 55% route share last week. Sterling Shepard was closer to 30. Graham, 49ers side of this game. Also very interesting here. Mac Jones has been slinging it. He's actually averaging the most passing yards per game in the NFL. And we know where the targets are going. Christian McCaffrey, Jawan Jennings, if he's up. And, Jake Tonjes too, again, on a loaded tight end slate, has also been playing really well and earning plenty of targets. What do you think of the 49ers in this game in general?
Love Mac Jones, 5,600. He's by far my favorite quarterback. Drake May's 5,900. He's basically 6K, sub 6K. He's certainly my favorite quarterback. I like him significantly more than Trevor Lawrence. I'm with Ryan that I think Sam Darnold is a better play in that game. But Mac is just awesome. I mean, he's been just balling out, 279 or more yards in 3 of his starts this year. He's finished no worse than QB 15 in weekly scoring. So he's got a good floor. And this is like the spot for the 49ers to really have to ramp up their pace and passing this week. Tampa Bay is one of the best run defenses in the NFL. I think Cleveland is probably just a little better, but Tampa has been awesome against the run. They have not been able to block and get McCaffrey into space this season. So this to me just like screams Mac. And he's really fun to stack. Like, I think we're going to get Juwan Jennings. He's 4,800, another great way to get off Olave chalk. Jennings leads this team in target share when his quarterback has been blitzed this season. And when you face Tampa Bay, you're going to have to face Todd Bowles and his blitz packages. Jones has been awesome when blitzed this season. He's top 5 in fantasy points per drop back against the blitz. There's just a number of ways to play it. I think Mac with McCaffrey is pretty easy. I always love playing Purdy with McCaffrey. Definitely love the idea of playing Mac with McCaffrey as well. Juwan Jennings, like I said, is a good play. I also think Jake Tonjes is in play at 3,700. I think he projects fairly similarly to Cade Otton, but Tampa Bay is allowing the 5th most schedule adjusted fantasy points to tight end. You could certainly stack him in 49ers game stacks. And yeah, I said earlier, Panthers, Cowboys is probably the best game environment we've gotten, but this is way better than Jags Seahawks. Same total, but way, way better. I see this as Baker Mayfield has just been a kingmaker, elevating the talent around him. It's really close between Rashad and Rico, just like really, really close, but I think I give Rashad the slight edge. His passing down role is just awesome. And yeah, I think Cade Otton, Jake, you brought him up. I think he's a legitimately good play. Like, I know it's so gross, but he had 4 for 81 last week. You go back and you look at the 4 games that Evans and Godwin missed last season. The dude had 30 catches for 293 yards in those 4 games. Of course, they didn't have Emeka Egbuka back then just balling out. But we've seen with the Bucs when they lose their guys, they just get more and more consolidated around Otton. So I think he's pretty good in Baker stacks. And, if you wanted to stack this game up with Mac on the other side, I think Otton at 3,400 is, like I said, he's pretty close to Tonjes.
Yeah. I think they're both solid plays. I've probably said this 5 times already, but this is just an amazing tight end slate. So I don't know if I'm going to get to either guy outside of game stacks, but the game stacks here are super, super juicy. Again, I'm very certain that Mac Jones is going to play, but he is listed as questionable. I just wanted to throw this out there, kind of like the Taysom Hill call. If Mac Jones sits, Adrian Martinez is going to be the best quarterback value on the slate, and it's actually not going to be close. He has insane rushing upside. He would be 4K. Again, I don't think we're gonna get that at all, but that is something to just keep an eye on to make sure Mac Jones is active. But this is a very, very fun game. And I also wonder, Juwan Jennings is going to project really well, but he does it the Q tag, and this is a 4 p.m. game. So I do wonder if we don't really see him end up particularly chalky in this one, which honestly makes me want to lean into the game environment and these game stacks even more. Give me all the Juwan, all the Mac Jones, all the Baker stacks here. Both running backs in this game are awesome. Egbuka has a fantastic schematic matchup. I mean, yeah, there is a lot to like here. That'll do
Real
it, guys.
Quick, just only other thing I want to say, if Juwan is inactive, it's a really easy pivot to Kendrick Bourne, who is only 100 or 200 more, going to be in a similar role. Has been spammed with these low ADOT targets that work against this Buccaneers blitz. That goes for the whole offense. Yeah, you can't lose in this game is how I feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. Just leave the extra. It's, I believe, 200 on the board. Yeah, Kendrick Bourne is 5K. Make sure you can get up to Kendrick, keep Juwan in your flex, get a little bit of that late swap flexibility there. But this is a fantastic game here. And that'll do it for the Week 6 edition of Cashing Points. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in and commenting during the stream, and we will see you all at the top of the leaderboards. What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.